In touch.
The United States put up no roadblocks when they bought American record companies. And movie studios. And real estate. But now that the Japanese have offered to buy a Major League Baseball team, all of the pent-up anger against Japan is spilling out. Tonight, could American anger at Japan lead Uncle Sam to cut off his nose to spite his face?
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Some time ago, the excellent PBS series Frontline ran a documentary called American Game, Japanese Rules. In part, it dealt with the game of baseball, as it is played in Japan. The rules are essentially the same, but the culture within which the game is played is definitely not. One American who was making very good money playing for a Japanese team explained how frustrating he found it to be playing baseball in a country where winning is not all that important. In fact, he pointed out, Japanese players, managers, and fans are often happiest when a game ends in a tie, thereby avoiding a loss of face for everyone. Obviously, there is a culture gap between our two countries, but it's one that didn't bother us all that much back in the days when the Japanese economy was still clearly inferior to our own, when Japanese visitors studied our industry and businesses with a mixture of awe and admiration. Back in the days when free trade meant a positive trade balance for the United States. These days, U.S. business is not doing all that well. And that, as Dave Marash reports, combined with some ill-chosen remarks by some Japanese politicians, is turning the relationship sour in business and in baseball.
You've heard the cliche, the only things that count in real estate are location, location, and location. Well, if you've tried to sell your house recently, you know even more important is timing, timing, and timing. And speaking of timing, how's right now for a proposal to sell baseball Seattle Mariners to a group headed by one of Japan's biggest industrialists?
I'm Bob Kerrey, and if I'm president, the time for begging is through. I'll tell Japan if we can't sell in their market, they can't sell in ours.
With would-be presidents pinning their hopes on being perceived as the Stonewall Jacksons of Pacific trade, and with Japanese leaders from the Prime Minister on down continually bashing American workers, has there ever been a worse time for Nintendo's Hiroshi Yamauchi to offer up $75 million for a 60% share of the Mariners?
It is bad timing. An aide for Senator Brock Adams called it a trans-Pacific food fight that they got caught in the middle of.
Adams and his fellow Washington Senator Slade Gorton invited Yamauchi to buy the Mariners to save Major League Baseball for their state. The team could move to St. Petersburg, Florida, if Yamauchi and his partners are turned down. John Ellis, CEO of Puget Power, the Seattle area's utility company, would be the managing partner of the Yamauchi Group.
Look at this deal for a minute. This is not one where jobs are being exported to Japan and American dollars are flowing out of the country and the import-export balance is being thrown out of whack. It's exactly the other way around. Mr. Yamauchi's money will be invested here in this community, in this country.
Still, the Commissioner of Baseball's first off-the-cuff response was dismissive.
We have some major policies in baseball that would be affected by having Japanese ownership. We'll look at it, but I would think it's unlikely.
Actually, baseball has never formally adopted such a policy on foreign ownership. And say some critics, Vincent's ad hoc policy-making shows
Baseball practices a subtle racism toward Latin America and the Far East. And baseball should think twice about it, because the Japanese may have something to bring to the game.
But right now, few Americans seem in a mood to absorb any Japanese contributions, especially to America's national pastime. A nationwide poll taken earlier this week showed 61% against permitting a Japanese investor to own the Mariners. In minor league towns like Birmingham, Vancouver, and Visalia, Japanese ownership has taken over without incident. And in Salinas, California, where the Japanese proprietors imported a dozen Japanese players, attendance went up.
I think the way the situation is now with Japan and America, I think under these particular circumstances, I don't think it'll be a good idea for it right now.
Warren Cromartie sandwiched 7 years playing baseball in Japan between stints in America's major leagues. He's all for that, but opposes Japanese ownership of the Mariners.
I think their ball players should be allowed to come over here and play, just like our ball players are allowed to go over there and play. But as far as the situation right now, once again, I don't think so.
One reason, what would happen if an American tried to buy a majority share of a Japanese baseball team?
He'll never get it. As simple as that.
Yes, that's right. The Japanese baseball leagues do have a formal policy. No foreign investor can own a majority share.
There's something to be said for, protecting America first and American jobs and things like that. But the fact is that Nintendo does employ people in America, and their management, from what I've read and what I've heard, has done its best to fit in.
In Seattle, there seems to be little debate. Last season, the Mariners outdrew the New York Yankees by 15%. And fans and civic boosters don't want to lose their home team, no matter who owns them.
Well, I certainly would like to see him staying. I have no objection to the Japanese buying and buying everything else. They might as well buy that, too.
Yesterday in New York, Seattle Mayor Norm Rice led a local delegation to lobby Commissioner Vincent to approve the sale. Vincent was making no snap declarations. Instead, he left to his owners the decision on an issue that seems as slippery and unappetizing as a major league spitball.
It's more complicated than I can deal with off the top of my head. There are a set of criteria for ownership. Some of them are financial, some relating to integrity. The issue that we have been dealing with here, let me put it in focus, is one of ownership, local ownership.
In calmer times, baseball's owners have ignored their own directives on who could join their club. 2 years ago, criteria for local ownership and financial stability were stretched to let Jeff Smulyan of Indianapolis buy a team with virtually no money down. That team was the Seattle Mariners. I'm Dave Marash for Nightline in Washington.
And when we come back, we'll be joined by Senator Don Riegle, who's opposed to what he calls the buying up of America by Japan Incorporated. By the governor of Washington, Booth Gardner, who believes that good trade relations with Japan are crucial to his state's economy. And by author David Halberstam, who's written extensively about Japan and believes the U.S. should put its own house in order instead of complaining about the Japanese.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by the Discover Card.
If you're using a credit card to get a cash advance, you're probably getting soaked, because ordinary cards charge you interest right from day one, which is why you should use the Discover Card. Just pay your full monthly balance and a small transaction fee, and we'll give you cash interest-free, so you can avoid taking a bath. It pays to Discover.
I don't remember. It was something new.
The Nicoderm patch. Nicotine transdermal system.
Yeah, it's called Nicoderm.
Oh, yeah, the patch.
Right, it's a patch. Nicoderm. It's new. A lot of people don't know about it. Maybe I'll ask my doctor.
Nicoderm. It's a patch, huh?
Yeah, it's a patch.
The Nicoderm patch. Ask your doctor about it.
The All Canada Show. Discover the great outdoors. Discover Canada.
A whole new world awaits you at the All Canada Show. Plan the adventure of a lifetime.
Hi, I'm Babe Winkleman. Join me at the All Canada Show where you can win some great prizes.
Your adventure starts here. The All Canada Show.
Coming to Des Moines, February 6th through the 9th.
Would our government experiment with people's lives and not tell them? You bet. The guinea pigs, 400 black men suffering syphilis. Prime time, Thursday.
Joining us now from our Washington studio is Senator Don Riegle, a Democrat from Michigan and chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. From Seattle, the governor of Washington, Booth Gardner. And from our New York studios, author David Halberstam, who wrote about the Japanese in his books The Reckoning and The Next Century. Senator Riegle, since we tend to take baseball as a symbol of all things American, let's take a look at the potential sale of the Seattle Mariners and see whether we can draw any symbolic conclusions from that as it relates to the U.S.-Japanese trade relationship. Should it?
Well, I think in baseball, you've got a situation where there is this tradition of local ownership. I think if you had a German company or a French company trying to buy an American baseball team in Seattle or elsewhere, you'd have exactly the same response. In this case, it happens to be a Japanese company. It does illustrate the larger problem that Japan is loaded with money these days that has left the United States through the trade deficits that have been piling up year after year. Japan has taken $460 billion out of the United States since 1980, and much of it through unfair trade practices. That's not the whole story, but it is a significant part of the problem, and it's left us very much weakened financially, and it's one of the reasons why we see such widespread unemployment in America today.
So when there is an opportunity, then, for the U.S. economy to sop some of those dollars back up again and to do so without it creating any adverse conditions for American workers, why not do it?
Well, I think, again, you've got this tradition in baseball. Where a baseball team goes depends upon whether there's local ownership that has the financial strength and the other qualifications to be able to support a team. For some reason, Seattle is not able, apparently, to muster the financial strength there to hold the team with American owners. I don't understand why that's the case, but there are other cities in America that would love to have that team and do have the local support and the financial strength to want to take the team to that city. So no city by itself is entitled, I think, to have an American League team in their hometown if there is not that local support.
Governor Gardner, why don't you give us your view then of why it is that there is such a fuss about this if, as the good senator points out, it is tradition. Lord knows we wouldn't want to mess with tradition.
Well, first of all, Don mentioned that a foreign company was buying us. We asked them to come in and be a participant in this, and there were three conditions to the sale. Adequate capital, which there is for the first time in a Seattle franchise. A strong local commitment, which there is, that's been demonstrated through a commitment to season ticket sales and advertising revenues, and strong local control, which has been established through the conditions of the purchase agreement. Let me just say this. We're a trade-dependent state. 1 in 3.5 to 4 jobs in this state depend on trade. Japan is our neighbor. They're a major market for Washington State products. And we consider them very much a part of our culture, and we welcome them in this state. They're major contributors in large numbers of businesses and provide thousands of jobs for us.
David, in your long-standing role as observer and commentator, what is going on here? Here we have one American politician, obviously from Washington State, which is dependent upon its relationship with Japan, trying to make nice, and obviously another politician, a senator from Michigan, which is badly hurt by the Japanese. So draw it all together for us.
Well, I think the timing is critical. We're obviously edgier with the Japanese than we've been, and they are edgier with us. The relationship has changed. In our case, the student has become the professor. In their case, the kind of economic power they have isn't matched by political or military power, and they're restless with that. And the Cold War is over, and therefore that which bound us together for so long and kept us suppressing some of the mutual resentments that we had has surfaced. There's nothing to suppress that now. So it's beginning to surface, and it manifests itself in different ways, whether it's the sale of Rockefeller Center or a baseball team. I think the owners are probably nervous in no small part because the Japanese are simply more liquid than we are, and instead of signing players for 30 or 35 million, perhaps they're afraid it'll go to 45 million. In terms of the tradition of baseball and ownership, I think that's something of a myth. I'm a great Fay Vincent fan. I think he's been a good commissioner. I think he probably called this one wrong because I think there really is no great tradition of local ownership. If there had been, we wouldn't, with the New York Yankees, have had George Steinbrenner.
Or indeed, Senator Riegle, I rather suspect you wouldn't have the owner of the Seattle team that you've got right now. As Dave Marash pointed out, A, he didn't have the money, and B, he came in from Indianapolis.
It's interesting, one of the star players for the Detroit Tigers used to play in Japan, Cecil Fielder, and we're very happy to have him. But, you know, this is also part of a much larger problem, and that is America is in serious economic trouble. And that spills over into this discussion now in terms of this baseball franchise. But, you know, we've got 16 million people in America today that want full-time work and can't find it. And as that economic problem continues and worsens, anytime you've got a massive trade deficit with one country, as we do with Japan, it's unique. It's unlike that with any other country. And other problems countries have problems with Japan, as we have had. If we don't get this thing straightened out financially and between the two nations and get some fair trading rules in place, much more damage is going to occur here in the United States, and it's going to increasingly poison the relationship. And that should be avoided, because we should have no argument with the Japanese people per se, but the attitudes of the leaders in business and government in Japan, I think, is a predatory relationship with respect to their trading relationships with the United States. They've done great damage here. They've targeted and destroyed entire industries. And that's not good for us, and in the long run, I don't think it's good for them either.
Gentlemen, we have to take a break. Governor Gardner, I know you're poised to respond to that, and I'll give you a chance to do that as soon as we come back. We'll continue our discussion in a moment.
Everyone has a dream, a vision deep inside.
When I decide to follow up on an investing idea, I need a broker who's ready when I am.
We make it easier to follow your own lead.
I can call Schwab at any hour, nights or weekends, get the information I need, even place an order to trade.
Always there to give you just the help you need.
Help yourself at Schwab today.
Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation to the Bahamas, Caribbean, or Mexican Riviera on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Hey, there's a really big Dollar Day sale going on right now at Ace. Yep, $1 buys any one of these Ace Best Buys. Over 2 dozen for just $1 a piece. Look for Ace really big Dollar Day circulars and come in today. Hey, Ace is the place.
In the beginning, chaos reigned upon shoppers. High prices plagued the land. But there was created a place where one could shop from the comforts of home. That place was Home Shopping Club, founded on the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not pay retail.
Hard-working people paying good money for bad health insurance. They thought they were covered until they got sick. Primetime investigates Thursday.
Tomorrow, without assistance from the former Soviet Union, can Cuba survive? Comments from Fidel Castro.
Plus the medicine man, Sean Connery, on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Governor Gardner, let's speculate for a moment that the current nastiness between the United States and Japan were to get out of hand, and the Japanese were to say, all right, if that's the way you feel about us, we're going to pick up our marbles and go home. What would that mean to the state of Washington?
It would mean a great deal, but I think what we need to recognize is that Japan is not at the root of our economic problems. Better education, job training programs, affordable health care, a strong domestic program is. But I think we have to carry Don's analogy a step further, which is he talked about the trade deficit with Japan, but we have a close to $20 billion surplus with Europe. Would we like Europe to treat us the way we're talking about treating Japan? Well, the Boeing company is a perfect example. They design and market their airplanes out of the state of Washington, but their parts are made in 400 different locations around the world. We're an international state. We're a country that deals in a world economy. I think we have to learn to compete in that economy and not close our borders down.
David, if I may just go to David Halberstam for a moment. We had a graphic up just before the break which showed that in terms of direct foreign investment here in the United States, the Japanese have a direct foreign investment of $84 billion. The Europeans have a direct foreign investment of $220 billion. We don't seem to be at all upset about the European investment. Why are we so upset about the Japanese?
Well, I think the fact that Japan is different, we're not historically connected, we're not descended, our cultures are so different, the language is so different, there are great racial differences between us. The Japanese seem more alien. We have a harder time getting on with them. I would like to make a point of following up and dissenting from Don Riegle, particularly in his own state, an awful lot of that trade deficit is from the auto industry, and it's not because, particularly in that industry, of predatory Japanese practices. It's because the American auto industry created its norms in the 50s and 60s on a de facto monopoly and attitudes and a love of driving up the stock rather than satisfying customers that made it vulnerable to Japan. The Japanese have done well in auto particularly because they've made better cars. They've been better process-driven. And in addition, we've asked them in the last 10 years or so to do 3 things that pertain very directly to auto. And they've done all 3. We asked them to set a voluntary ceiling on how many cars they would ship here. Then we asked them to soften their yen to harden the yen. We thought they were getting away with it because they had a soft yen, and they dropped it from 240 to 120. And third, we asked them to come and set up plants here, and they did it, and they've been quite successful. In fact, they've shown American workers are quite good. I would agree with the senator and others that we have to work to make the Japanese accept a policy of reciprocity. That which they can do here, we can do there. It's very hard. Much of their strength has come from their insularity. But we've got to change that, and that's going to be a hard, long-range, delicate process.
Senator Riegle, I don't know if you want to respond directly to that, but go ahead then.
Well, Ted, first of all, America sells quite well in Europe, and particularly in cars. There was an article in yesterday's Washington Post here that says that U.S. car sales in Europe last year were up 65%. That's because we're allowed to sell there.
That's meaningless, though, Senator, without knowing what kind of numbers we're talking about.
Well,
65% represents what over what?
Well, as David just said, we actually have a surplus in trade with Europe. So we do very well in selling in Europe because they are an open market, as are we.
No, but do you happen to know how many units we sell? How many cars we sell?
I can read it out of the article, but it's tens of thousands of cars. I mean, it's multiples of what we are able to sell in Japan. Japan doesn't buy cars from anybody around the world except themselves. They've closed their market, and that's been a practice they've had in place now for a decade. But by doing that, they have drained, not just with cars, but in other areas of American products, $460 billion out of the United States since 1980. When you add to that the hundreds of billions that we have spent on national defense for them as well as for ourselves, they've spent virtually nothing in that area. And they've taken a free ride on our defense expenditures, put that into their industrial base, and now they have great economic strength, but they do not play fair in trade.
Can you understand, Senator, how the Japanese might be a little bit put out to hear a U.S. Senator saying that when, in point of fact, their Constitution was drafted by Douglas MacArthur, specifically prohibiting them from doing what it is you now complain they're not doing?
What I'm concerned about is that by having the advantage of taking a free ride on all of the massive defense spending that we have done. It's created an enormous debt in this country. It's part of the economic exhaustion that we're dealing with. For them to, in turn, pursue predatory trading practices where they sell below cost in the United States, keep their home market closed to U.S. products. They took $42 billion out of the United States last year. In December, they took $4.5 billion out of the United States. And not using fair tactics. Now, you can't have that go on when you've got 16 million people in the United States looking for work and not finding it.
So why, and I want to give Governor Gardner a chance to make a closing comment too, why then are you upset if they're going to put money back into the United States?
I think they should put more money back into the United States, but I think it should be in all of the kinds of work, including the high value-added work and high-level engineering. What they do, in many cases, they have us do the worker bee work, the subcontractor type work. That's what the Japanese leaders have been making reference to in some of these offensive comments the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Let me just jump in and give Governor Gardner a chance for the closing comment. We've got about 30, 40 seconds here.
Okay, well, I think we're a good example of what Don's talking about the Japanese doing. They have 2 or 3 major plants in this state that are high-tech, productive plants where they made $300 to $400 million investments and employ 300 to 400 people in each of the various situations. My view is that if we close our borders, we're going to lose thousands of jobs, we're going to drive up our prices, and most importantly, we're going to lose our incentive to get good products that can sell everywhere in the world.
Governor Gardner, thank you. Senator Riegle, David Halberstam, thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
I'll be back in a moment.
Piloting a corporate jet for Dow can be interesting and rewarding, particularly when it's an Angel flight. The corporate Angel network uses empty seats on company business trips to fly cancer patients who need specialized treatment. Patients like Christy. Dow was the first to make over 100 of these flights.
Welcome aboard, Angel.
This company does great things. This is one of them.
They've come for you. It's your bed, your Serta Perfect Sleeper, but it's the most comfortable spot in the house. The Serta surface and support-only Serta builds in makes it that way, the way it should be. It's why people are saying, I want my Serta.
Hurry, it's the Great American Serta Mattress Sale at participating retailers everywhere. They're blasting prices on Perfect Sleeper today.
Mariel, you and I have always been big fans of professional hairstylists.
You bet. I adore mine.
And I bet he feels the same.
But you know, I have to admit something.
Yes?
When I see those scissors coming at me, I just want to grab them. I love to change my hair. Thank goodness I trust my hairstylist completely. And the truth is, I feel great about my hair because of him. Well, and of course, Paul Mitchell, I wouldn't think of using anything else. Yeah, you and my hairstylist, you made me what I am today. Paul Mitchell products are guaranteed only when purchased in fine salons.
This is it. Your last chance to get a brand new Ford Ranger for only $9,085. That's a great price on America's favorite sport truck. Loaded with a sliding rear window, AM/FM stereo, chrome rear step bumper, and more. But hurry, this special offer is only for a limited time, and this may be your last chance to get a fully equipped Ford Ranger for only $9,085. See your local Ford dealer now, because this is your last chance.
Tomorrow, a special edition of Nightline. Even as President Bush announces his national health care plan tomorrow evening, I'll be at the University of Chicago for a town meeting titled Emergency, Healthcare in America. We'll examine the healthcare crisis in this country and ask what the government's role should be. A special edition of Nightline tomorrow night. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
If you wish a videocassette version of Nightline, the cost is $14.98 plus $3.95 shipping and handling. This has been Nightline.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
The person you love is dead.
Dear God, what did I do?
Everyone knows why,
Daddy, are you all right?
except you.
This is too weird for you.
You're gonna tell me, Dixon. You're gonna tell me now.
Well, you go to hell.
It's no longer his neck, it's yours.
You sanctimonious!
Scott Turo's The Burden of Proof, Sunday at 9/8 Central.
Some high clouds overnight with a low in the 20s.